Hi there. My name's Chris. I'm one of the wellbeing practitioners here at Staffs University. Thank you for joining me today. I wanted to share with you a little PowerPoint I've prepared on anxiety. It's a condition that a lot of us experience, and it can be a very unpleasant experience for a lot of people. And of course, joining the university, moving to a new place, you might be feeling quite anxious today. So I'm hoping that this video is going to prove helpful for you. Um, so the purpose of this PowerPoint I've prepared is to help you understand why anxiety is actually an important tool. It's also to help identify how anxiety can also be helpful to us, but also to help introduce some simple methods to try and manage those uncomfortable and difficult feelings that we might have or experience when we are having anxious thoughts. So, first of all, when I'm working with clients, the first thing I'll kind of discuss with them is what is their understanding of anxiety for starting. There seems to be a trend in society these days that anxiety is like an illness. It's something that we develop, and it has to be treated with medication, and it's something that's like I said, and don't get me wrong, of course, we can develop anxious disorders where we are constantly in a state of anxiety. However, for a lot of the time, it's a state that we can actually take control of and manage. But what I always do with people is try and explain to them, really, what is anxiety for? Why do we have it? Now, the first thing I also suggest to people is that every living creature on the planet, even insects, experience what's called the fight or flight response, and that's kind of represented here with a couple of little images I've got of this caveman dude running away from a saber-toothed cat, and also this one that's in what we call the fight or flight response. Now, for those of you that haven't heard of what the fight or flight response is, typically when a living creature is faced with a threat, it does a quick assessment and it decides whether or not it can fight it and beat that threat away, or if it should run away from it. Birds do this. When we step out in the garden, we see them just take off and fly away. Or, when we walk through the park, we might disturb a squirrel and it running up the tree. Just as if we bump into quite a large dog and we scare it, it'll start barking at us, letting us know that it's prepared to fight if it has to. All living creatures have this fight or flight response, which is part of the anxious brain. Now, why we have it, we used to live in a time where we didn't have hospitals, we didn't have supermarkets. We lived, in a tree house that we crudely knocked up, or in a cave or something like that. And if we were going to eat, it meant that we had to basically try and go out and hunt something or forage something. And, people were never, we aren't physically designed to be at the top of the food chain. It's only our technology that's allowed us to get that. We are squidgy little lumps of meat running around that are easy prey for things like wolves, tigers, bears, and lions and stuff like that. And of course, thousands of years ago, when we were only armed with, a tool that's made out of a pointy stick or an axe with a stone head to it, we had very simple means of protecting ourselves. And if we were living in the cave, dealing with the fact that we're hungry, our family are hungry, and we need to go out and get food, we are going to be experiencing anxiety, because we are going to be then playing through our mind. First of all, where do I need to go to try and find some food? I also am aware that there are predators out there. I heard that some wolves howling last night, maybe, or my friend Dave got eaten last week by a lion. We were very aware of the risks associated with going out of our safe place, even to the point of we might bump into another caveman from a rival tribe, for example, that could also result in our death or something. Anxiety helped keep us alive. Now, the difficulty we have is that our anxious brain has difficulty sometimes understanding what the threat is. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in just a moment. So the next slide is covering why we have anxiety and why it's still prevalent today. Now, as I mentioned, all living creatures have this response, and it's because there's a part in the brain called the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is this tiny little walnut-shaped thing that doesn't really look like it does much, but it's really responsible for a lot of our processing. It helps us process our emotional states, our risk-reward stuff, but also it deals with the fearful responses and the threat management of anything that we are experiencing. And as you can see on the image here, I've got that picture of the guy. He spotted the dog. Maybe he's a little bit anxious. The dog looking quite harmless at the moment, but based on the other person's reaction, the dog might then become fearful. The amygdala and both of these parties is working away, understanding the threat, because ultimately the amygdala is trying to prevent us dying. And again, every animal on the planet has amygdalas. Crocodiles have them. Lions have them. It's how living creatures assess the risk or danger of what is in front of them, which is why it is useful. Because again, if we were to randomly bump into a bear in the street, not that it really happens in the UK, but if we did, the amygdala would make a very quick assessment, fill our body with adrenaline, and give us the strength we need to run away from that bear as fast as we can. Now, moving forward though to today, we live in a world, like I said, it's very different now. We do have hospitals where we can go and get treated if we're injured. We do have nice warm houses with central heating, typically, and water that comes out of taps, and food on every shop, and every corner. The world is very, very much different to how we started off. However, unfortunately, the amygdala, our brain, our physical bodies have no idea of that. As far as our brain is concerned, we are still running around the plains of Africa, hiding away from predators, hunting our dinner. As far as our brain is concerned, we are still living like that, which is why when we are doing day-to-day activities, we can notice ourselves feeling terribly anxious. I put a couple of random situations out there. So for starters, people might feel anxious about going outside, especially if they're in a new place. Well, that's quite justifiable if you think about it, especially if we go back a few thousand years, because if, say, we went to a new territory that we'd never been to before, we know there's a very good chance we might meet a predator that we hadn't even aware of existed, or we might meet a tribe of people that we've never met before, who might want to cause us harm, or we might get injured and starve to death because we can't go and get help. Just going outside was a really risky thing a few thousand years ago. We get very anxious in job interviews, for example, and people feel like their life depends on it. Their threat response is really high when it comes to job interviews. But this again is because, well, if you go back in time, if you met somebody who would be sort of seen as a superior to you, or your life was in their hands pretty much. Again, the amygdala associates that with anybody in authority. Large crowds as well can be very scary for people. Again, what would happen if that crowd turns on us? The amygdala has no idea, and so we feel anxious in situations like this. So moving on, how can we try and manage those difficult feelings of anxiety? So in my own personal experiences of dealing with my own anxiety at times, I've managed to understand that often what I'm feeling anxious about is a little bit irrational. Okay, I'm assuming something that's going to be a lot less painful and scary and dangerous than I'm actually thinking it will be. Okay, so let's take, for example, I've started university. I'm going to my first lecture tomorrow, and I'm feeling nervous. And I might say to my friend, "Oh gosh, I'm so anxious about tomorrow. I'm feeling 9 out of 10 anxiety. My heart's thumping. I've cold sweats. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. I'm so worried." If we take a moment and stop, first of all, focus on what we know, and focus and clarify exactly what it is that we're anxious about. Okay, so I'm anxious because I'm going to a lecture for the first time and I won't know anyone there. Now, what I do is, first of all, I will start to consider, well, realistically, what is the worst possible outcome that will happen when I walk into that lecture theatre? So will people turn and attack me and kill me? Probably not. So will people beat me up? Probably not. Will people look at me? Possibly, yeah. Will people speak to me? Hopefully. Will I have a seat? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I will. Well, what's the worst that could happen? Well, maybe I'll get a bit lost, or I'll arrive late, or I answer a question wrong and feel embarrassed. Unpleasant feelings, things we want to avoid and we don't like. But is it justified that we get so anxious about these things? Now, let's remember what anxiety does. It helps us stay alive. It helps prevent death. So if we take what we're worried about, say, I'm worried I'll look silly in class. let's put that on a risk assessment. Okay, let's risk assess this. So 0 means nothing will happen. It's as safe as me being tucked up in bed, safe and warm at home. And 10 means I'm gonna die. Yeah, I'm in the ocean and there's a great white shark swimming in circles around me. I am going to die. Yeah. If we do a risk assessment on what it is we're worried about, weirdly, we realize that actually, even though we're 9 out of 10 anxious, the risk to ourselves is a lot lower. So sometimes when I'm doing this work with clients, I'll say, well, I guess it's a 5 then. And I'm like, well, let's just be really, really sort of, particular about this. I mean, 5's halfway to 10, so 5 would even be halfway to death, like life-altering injuries, something that's really going to cause a significant impact on our life. And then we go, okay, well, maybe it'll be a 3 or a 4. And I'm like, well, a 3 and a 4, then maybe something physical happened. Is it even that? And then I start to realize, well, yeah, okay, maybe at worst, then the lecturer might say something that I don't like or I feel embarrassed. Well, physically, what does that mean? It's about a 1 risk at the most. Realistically, I'm not going to get hurt in that lecture. I might feel a bit uncomfortable at one point. However, I've also got the option of getting up and walking out if I feel like I need to, or I've got options available to me. I know what I can do to comfort myself and take control of the situation. And then when we realise that, even though we're really anxious, the risk is only 2 out of 10 at the most, or something in these occasions, then weirdly somehow we start to feel better. And we can have that word with ourselves and say, well, okay, I'm anxious, I'm worried. However, I know I'll be okay, I'll be safe. And then we find it a little easier to go out of the door that day and go to our class. And yes, we will experience those absolutely normal sensations of anxiety. And, I hope they're like me in that, those feelings of concern in this scenario where we go to a lecture for the first time. But ultimately, we know that we'll get through it. We'll be okay. And soon enough, when it becomes a familiar place, we may even feel excited about going to that lecture, hopefully, or, feel positive about what we're going to be doing that day. So this presentation, obviously, like I said, it's very quick, very brief, but it's just introduce you to one way of thinking when it comes to dealing with anxiety. And of course, if you are somebody who is really struggling to cope with anxiety, I will always encourage you to reach out to us at the Wellbeing team here at the university. We will always be happy to support any of you guys with any of the issues that you might be experiencing, including anxiety, of course. On the next slide, you can see that I've added some of the links. What we ask people to do is complete our online form. When the link is there at the top, it won't take you long, just takes about 5 minutes to submit, and then we'll offer you an appointment. There's also a link there underneath for our website where you've got a lot of other useful resources. If you're watching this online, of course, you can't use the hyperlinks. There is actually a QR code there that you can scan with your phone, and it will take you straight to our website where you can access both of those links there that I've referenced just. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for listening. I really hope that you find it somewhat useful. I hope that you enjoy your time here at uni with us. And if I do get to speak to you, I look forward to meeting you. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.